Welcome to the NFP Podcast, where we explore the empowering world of natural family planning. I'm Amy Smith. Join me and my co-host Emily Appledorn each week. Together, we're here to dive deep into the science, the stories, and the spirituality behind NFP. Every week, we push back against the free love culture and advocate for a culture of responsible love, where intentionality and respect are at the forefront of family planning. Join us as we discuss everything from the practicalities of charting and fertility awareness to the profound impact NFP can have on relationships and communities. Whether you're new to NFP or a seasoned pro, our podcast is your go-to resource for honest conversations, expert insights, and real-life experiences. So grab a friend, settle in, and get ready to be inspired. This is the NFP Podcast.
All right, guys, welcome back to the podcast. I'm so excited for today's episode because we have on a beautiful young couple, Landon and Izzy, to share with us a little bit about their love story and being new parents. They have a beautiful little girl and kind of their experience learning about NFP during their single life and then as they got engaged and now early in their marriage. Just to kind of share some realistic kind of boots on the grounds, here's what this looks like in daily life experience, and from people who are a little bit younger. We had Jennifer's awesome story, but she's also a little bit older and has experienced infertility. And so this is just kind of a different side of the NFP spectrum, right? Knowing that all these couples come to this experience with a different background and have a different experience going through it, and they use different methods, etc. So welcome Izzy and Landon to the podcast.
Thank you for having us, Amy and Emily. It's good to be here.
We're so excited. Okay, so why don't you start? Because I used to do this. I don't know, Emily, if you do this too with your couples when you teach them for NFP, if you're doing like their marriage prep. But my favorite icebreaker, because I feel like people always came to the NFP class in marriage prep, either like one or two. They were either one or two like kind of extremes. One was like they were really excited. They came pretty much knowledgeable and ready to go. And the other side was like, this is going to be awkward. What are we going to talk about? Mm-hmm. So I feel like always a good icebreaker was like, I love to hear engagement stories or how did you guys meet? Yeah. So I'd like to start this off with that. So tell us how you guys met and then how you got engaged.
Yeah. Landon, do you want to share how we met, from your perspective and I can add along the way maybe.
Yeah. So we met at the College of William Mary. I was a junior fall semester, and Izzy was a sophomore. And it was the year or the first semester after COVID, so this would be fall of 2020. And we were both we had never actually met each other in person, but we knew that each other existed through small group leadership groups and stuff like that. So so I was in the Catholic Student Center, and I was going to watch a NBA game. I believe it was Celtics versus.
It matters.
Yeah. And so I was down there, and generally the Student Center is pretty packed. So,
but you were alone.
Correct. So yes. It's rare to be alone and not have other people around. But I was down there alone, just watching the game. And Izzy came, and it was around nighttime. So Izzy came, and I mean, we like our different perspectives come in. Is like I was sort of on a self-proclaimed dating fast because I just was like, I need to like figure this out, and so I was just like sort of trying to focus on the game and not this pretty girl walking in, and just because I didn't want to mess with my dating fast, and so so she came in, and then we started talking, but I was trying to be not
you were trying to be a little reserved.
A little standoff.
I mean, well, you were so like nice, but you were like not like, but yeah, I had
it was cordial.
Yeah, you were cordial, right? Yeah. So yeah, I was going there just because I was a small group leader. Was like, okay, I need and want to make just more Catholic friends. Like we'll get into this, but I just was at the place where I was like, okay, I really want to meet Catholic people, and I was like, okay, I finished up dinner. I'm like, I'm gonna go to the student center. I just felt like important to be there for whatever reason, and yeah, so I walked down. I see you watching a game. And, I like sports. I like watching sports. So I also understood, like, maybe he just wants to watch the sports. So I was like, yeah, hi, oh, you're the vice president, right? You're the guy that writes the emails. Yeah. They're really funny. Whatever.
We're also wearing masks because there's COVID. So
we couldn't really see each other's faces. Yeah. And so it was just like, some awkwardness, whatever. So yeah, but we chatted for like an hour. And I was like, oh, this guy's, the upper quadrant of his face is pretty cute, because he had a mask on. I was like, but yeah, he's, he's sweet, but I was also trying to just be like, okay, let's calm down. But that's how we met.
And then we didn't start dating until February
so we
of
met
2021.
September.
Yep.
Yeah. So we were just friends for a few months. But like really good friends. We did a lot, with a group because we had a similar group of friends through the Catholic Campus Ministries. We did a lot. We did a lot just like us two. Like we were friends, but there was definitely some feelings there. At least for me, there was some, this is interesting. But I'm glad that we were friends.
Oh, sorry. Did you break your dating fast, Landon?
Yeah.
Izzy, or did you?
So that's a good question. I think it was declared around like May of 2020. So it wasn't like the full year, which like is sort of
standard.
Yeah, but it was a good 8 months. So which for me like was like groundbreaking.
But there's a lot of like, prayer and discernment. That's why we were friends for a while, because you were like, I really want to, just take this seriously, which I appreciated, and you just wanted to.
And it was also, since it was COVID, Thanksgiving break and winter break were smushed together, so we had like 3 months essentially of not being at school and seeing each other.
So that would have been tough to kind of start dating.
So after that winter break, I was like, if I go back and I still like her, then I'll ask her out.
Like, oh, that's nice.
But you were making sure you were kind of, not you that you were hardcore discerning the priesthood, but you just wanted to make sure that if that was something God was calling you to, that you were open to it, right?
Yeah. Honestly, I was just in my head at that moment in time. I felt like I was so bad at dating women that like I felt like the priesthood was just like something that was maybe what God was calling me to, because I was like just kept screwing things up. So, but then I wanted to give it a serious look. But obviously, not obviously, but looking back and through years of praying through it, it's like I was, just very broken from previous relationships or my own perspective. So I just was like, praise God that like I, was not too hard on myself and ran away from this vocation, because honestly, the biggest reason I wanted to be a priest was because I didn't have to date girls anymore. And then I realized over that winter break, I was like, yeah, I think I would be running away. And so I was like, I'll give it a shot.
And then here we are. Yeah. And so that's how we started dating. We dated for a year and a half and then got engaged of August of 2022.
Yes.
Right.
And Landon, you were already graduated at that time?
Correct. Yeah. I've been out of school for about 8 months.
Yeah. And I had one more semester. I was graduating early from William and Mary, but it was the fall going into my senior year. So I had one more semester. We got engaged right before that semester started. So, yeah.
And then you guys, and so how did you get engaged?
Yeah. So, let's see.
I definitely, I knew that it was coming. We had talked about this stuff a good amount. We were also long distance at that point. So it's you talk about plans,
talk about plans. And when you
hang on. Sorry, guys. I think that's like one of the points I wanted to make, though, is like, that's actually not something that a lot of people talk about, in that a lot of times it's kind of, people are, I mean, we just know this, like, even just by social science statistics, most marriages are kind of slid into, because you're sleeping together, you're living together, and then, you just get married. And so, so no, it is, I mean, kudos to you guys. I mean, thanks be to God. It's definitely a gift to have maturely and responsibly talked about that beforehand, to say, like, there's a purpose to dating. And is that something you guys talked about when you were dating? Like, are we, obviously you have fun when you're dating, right? Because you like the person. And you're getting to know them more, and you started to love the person. And so when you were dating, like, were there conversations about, what's the point of this? Like, is this just for fun, or like, hey, I'm not coming to this just for like a good time. Like, I'm actually discerning, like, are we marriage material or not? Should we go our separate ways? What did that conversation look like, if you guys had it at all?
So, I mean, that's a good point, Amy, because I think if you're, like, for us in college, and like even now, like, we can be insulated in an environment of like Catholic people, and it's just like, oh yeah, obviously we didn't do those things before marriage, but it's not obvious to the wider culture. And it is a grace that, like, we just didn't go the easy route. In terms of the conversations that we had, I think, I mean, I knew that in high school or so that, when you're dating someone, you're either going to marry them or you're going to break up. Like, there's no, like, that's just the fate of relationships. And I think, like, also, we sort of, like, when you're surrounded by a hookup culture, and you're just like wanting something more, you're just sort of like, okay, and especially in college, when you're around so many people striving for virtue and holiness, you're like, I would like to pursue this woman. And also,
so we talked about it a lot.
We did talk about it a lot.
I remember, before we started dating, we were just friends, we were playing pool together, and I saw that you're reading Love and Responsibility by JPII, and I was like, this guy's thinking about some things here, so that was like a green flag for me, right? So we talked about it a lot, but I think we also both have a love and a heart for theology of the body, which, again, maybe we'll get into that more. But I think, just both of our stories, I mean, I think everyone has a love for it, right? Because it's beautiful. But I think certain people have, I don't know, it's just something that we're very intentional about talking about in our relationship. And just, we like listening to podcasts about, and, being on podcasts about, right? So yes, we talked about it quite a lot. Like, the purpose of this relationship is marriage. We're discerning that, and let's try to walk, to heaven together, which, you were asking Amy about our engagement. Our engagement definitely reflected that. So I can do a little, like, how we got engaged story.
Yeah.
So, I was living in Williamsburg at the time. It was summer. Landon came down to visit, and I don't remember a lot of other things that we did. You were staying with one of your friends, but we went out to dinner at the place that we had our first date, in Williamsburg. So that was super sweet. And again, I had like a good feeling. I didn't know how it was going to happen, but I'm like, okay, it's happening. It's happening tonight. My nails are done, all of the things, like so we're at dinner, lovely dinner. We walk around Williamsburg, which, if you've been there, it's beautiful, lovely summer evening. And then we drive to the shrine, right, which is the Catholic church right next to campus. It's on campus. It's the one that we kind of met at. It's the Catholic church there. And we pull up in the parking lot, and there's like no cars there except for one. And it's Father Kyle's car, which is the priest at the shrine. And I was like, oh man, like this is going to be awkward. Like Father Kyle's in here doing something, and I think Landon wants to propose to me in here. And, what are we supposed to do? Like wait for him to leave. So I'm just like thinking all these things like, oh man, like what's going on like a whatever Saturday night at like 8 p.m. So we walk in and Landon had asked Father Kyle to set up adoration for just us two. So Father Kyle's sitting like in the way back corner, adoring. And as soon as he sees us walk in, he like scoots out the door and, so that was really sweet. And he had set up those kneelers right in front, the ones that you have, that you use, at a wedding in a Catholic church. And so, we're just adoring Jesus for, I don't know how long, I'm blacking out. Not really, but it's like, I don't know, maybe it's like 20 minutes, who knows? Yeah. And that was beautiful. It was just us in there. The candles were lit. And it is just a special place for us because we had been there a lot throughout our college time together. And then we stood up, you got down on one knee, you said some very beautiful things, and and you proposed. So that was really sweet.
And then Father Kyle had to sort of close up the shrine, and Izzy was in tears and
in a good way, right?
Tears, yeah. And it's just like, is Father Kyle gonna come out and see me like this?
I was like, I'm crying. I'm like, oh, that's so awkward.
Dude, this guy's gonna marry us. You gotta get used to this.
Yeah. So, you like texted him like, hey, you can come back in now.
Yeah.
He really, really awkwardly, not awkwardly, it was awkward maybe for us, but he looked very happy. And he proposed, the Blessed Sacrament. And so that was how we got engaged, and it was lovely. So yeah.
That's
so
the
most beautiful story I've ever heard. Ever.
Landon put a lot of thought into it, so it was really beautiful, and just reflected, what we want to do together and our relationship, and so that was great.
Did you have any idea he was going to do that? Like you said you felt like he was going to propose, but did you have did you ever suspect?
Well, I felt like it was going to be in the shrine. Like, just because I knew Landon, in like the best way, just because I knew Landon, he's very intentional, has always been very intentional. It's like the word that I would use to describe him. And so I knew, he'd want to do the best proposal. And I think for Landon and for me, but for Landon, I think, it wouldn't be the best proposal if Jesus wasn't there, for him, so I just think, I just think it was like a no-brainer for him, probably. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. But I feel like when he was thinking about it, he was probably like, yeah, Jesus has to be there.
It's a safe bet.
Yeah. And so I didn't know about, the whole adoration necessarily. But I was like, okay, it's going to be in the shrine, I think. Besides that, who knows? Obviously, I was surprised. But again, in the best way. I wasn't, just because I knew who I was going to marry. So yeah.
Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful.
Yeah.
That's such a good story. I know. Okay. So then you guys were married the following summer. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. The following July.
So
following July.
11-month engagement. Yeah.
Okay. Following July. And we were so blessed. We got to be at that wedding. It was so beautiful. And then, so you guys were married in July, and then, when did you guys call us and tell us you were pregnant with Lucy?
I don't know when we called you, but pretty much I found out that I was pregnant like 2 weeks after we were married.
Okay.
So,
I think, okay. I think you called us in September. I want to say it was after the twins' birthday.
Yeah.
But yeah, I still remember that call. That was really exciting. Okay. So then you guys found out you were pregnant. With Lucy. So good. This kind of brings us to another aspect of our conversation, which is, I guess, like just in general, being open to life. And so you guys approached marriage, correct me if I'm wrong here, right? But you guys approached marriage very much on the same page with your understanding of Catholic Church teaching on marriage and sexuality, and knowing that when you get married, you are kind of signing a blank piece of paper that says whatever God's will is for our marriage, and being open to life. And for you guys, that included, I should say, having being blessed with Lucy kind of right away. So when you first understood, or I guess were exposed to the church's teaching on marriage and sexuality and openness to life, natural family planning, kind of the hodgepodge of topics, I'd be so curious to hear from both of you. What was your initial experience? Where were you at in your faith journey? Was it something that you learned about it and you were like, oh my gosh, an immediate, just like hook, line, and sinker, like, this is the best thing I've ever heard. Right. This is beautiful. Or was it more like, ooh, this is a lot. I don't know about this.
Yeah. I can go first. So I was, cradle Catholic, right? So, born and raised Catholic in Wisconsin. I'm from Wisconsin. So, and where I grew up, my whole family was Catholic, so I'm very blessed in that way. I went to Catholic school, so I was very much surrounded by Catholicism, like, my whole life. But that didn't, as you guys may know too, always mean that I had like the best formation on some of these things. I feel like that's kind of like a standard with a lot of people that I talk to, our age at least, of just like, yeah, we were born, raised Catholic. And I knew I wanted to be Catholic. My relationship with Jesus was important. I think I could say that like my whole life. But I didn't always know how that looked and what that meant to like live it out in relationships. Like I knew, okay, like I knew pretty much, middle school, high school, sex is for marriage, right? Sex is for marriage. And I wanted that. Like there was really never a time that I didn't want to save sex for marriage, which that is solely by the grace of God. Truly, when I say that, looking back, I'm like, oh my goodness. So yeah, that was a blessing. But I think my total understanding of, the goodness of the human body and what that actually meant in relationships. It's like, oh, it's not just sex, right? It's like, it goes a lot deeper than that. Like the reasonings of, lust, right? Like you can look at someone lustfully. I was like, like I heard that, but I'm like, what does that mean? So that was kind of like this disconnect in my brain of like, I want to save sex for marriage, but everything else is pretty much fine, right? So that's like in my brain, the way that I kind of thought of everything, middle school, high school. And we had, in high school, we talked about NFP very briefly, I think like in a religion class. But I'm pretty sure, again, I don't really remember, which I think kind of says a lot, about the class. It didn't seem like it was that memorable. I think maybe it was like a day, that we talked about. Oh, if you're Catholic, you do NFP, sex is for marriage, you do NFP. And I think they kind of just made it sound like the rhythm method, which is just like the calendar method, pretty much like 2 weeks after you get your period, you're fertile, and then another 2 weeks after that, you probably get your period again. Just like a very like counting the calendar day, kind of simplistic thing. I don't remember, talking about Marquette or Creighton. I was exposed to that through some family conversations. But I think, again, in my mind, I was like, okay, I know sex is for marriage, but do people like really do that? Just because I didn't feel like I had a lot of role models in my life that were like talking to me about it, like intimately, right? Because it's one thing to hear it in school and to know it in church, but it's another thing to like have someone that you maybe is younger, right? And seems cool and you look up to when you're a kid, be like, yeah, your body was created by God. It is so good. This is, why sex is for marriage. You know, it's unitive, it's procreative. This is the purpose. So I didn't really get that. So I was like, I had some understanding, some were not there. So yeah, I never was like, no, this is silly, this is stupid, but I didn't always have the understanding. And, you know, some of that's my own ignorance, right? And some of that's just formation that I received. So I was always, and then when I heard about NFP, I think it was in high school, and I was like, yeah, I'll do that. You know, because I believe the Catholic Church was, you know, true. And if this is what they taught, I was like, okay, you know, I'll do it. I think the hard part for me was what would other people think. I remember that was like embarrassing and hard, you know, just because high school is high school, you know, and you want people to like you and you want boys to like you. And yeah, I think that was the hardest part of, you know, I still liked, again, was not perfect. Definitely liked attention from boys, like a lot of high school girls do. You know, definitely dated around a little bit. Yeah, so just kind of this like conflicting, love Jesus, want to do NFP, but also I can make some of my own decisions in some of these other areas of my life. So yeah, I think that's kind of was me, and then had my reversion like my freshman year of college, kind of like I was always Catholic, but kind of was like, okay, I'm Catholic. Like I want my whole life to reflect how much I love God. So we got to change a few things. Yeah. And then that's when I learned more about it, listened to podcasts about NFP. That's when I read Love and Responsibility, more Theology of the Body, you know, a lot of JPII. And I was like, oh, wow, this is amazing. And that was also around the time that Landon and I were meeting, you know, he was a big influence of that, because I was like, I saw him and I was like, wow, here's this guy who's super cool and cute and I like him a lot. And he also takes these things seriously. So I think there's, you know, a good reason why I should too. So, yeah, I think that answered your question. But anyway, so that's me.
Yeah. So, before you jump in and share yours, let's just keep going a little bit, Izzy. So then when did you start kind of tracking your cycle, and what method did you use? Did you wait till you got engaged? You were already kind of learning about it before you got engaged. Kind of how did that look?
Yeah. So, I mean, like I had always, you know, tracked my cycle, but like, you know, here's when I got my period, you know, and that's like, you know, that's it. I started, so we were listening to podcasts kind of separately, but we were dating. So I don't remember if we talked about NFP. I mean, I know that we talked about, oh yeah, we're going to do this. I don't remember the extent to which we talked about it when we were dating, but when we were dating, no, we were listening to podcasts, learning about, Creighton, Marquette, you know, Boston Crosscheck, like all the different methods. And we're just thinking about what would be the best fit for us. So we decided Marquette method is what we wanted to do. And that's what we do. That's what we've done. So we decided on that. We took the classes through like an online, they're called Whole Mission. We had listened to a podcast where the founder was talking about it. So we took classes there with the Marquette instructor, and I started tracking using the Marquette method when we were engaged. I had at least like 6 cycles with the Marquette method, and then got married and obviously got pregnant like right away. So, you know, then you don't, you know, for people that might not know, you don't track when you're pregnant. And then I've been postpartum, and that's a whole nother beast, you know, postpartum tracking. But we can still use like a modified Marquette. So that's what we're doing right now, since I'm only 6 months postpartum and haven't started cycling yet.
So are there anything, I'm asking this question because it's something that Joey and I are very aware of, is that when you enter into marriage kind of on the Catholic train, the Catholic sexuality train, right? It's like, I am 100% into all of this. This is great, right? And then you get married and you start the practical application of things like, you know, sometimes it's like, oh, wow, this is not quite what, the idealistic thing. I didn't realize I had idolized something in my mind until I start living things out in a real everyday life. And I'm like, oh, okay. Like, this is still the truth. Absolutely. 100%. Still 100% on board, but it's not as like whimsical as I think I thought it was going to be. Anyway, I imagine you and Landon have your feet more solidly on the ground than maybe Joey and I did. So perhaps you didn't have that experience, but I guess I'm just curious, kind of transitioning into married life and now doing the daily with, a little one too, has your perspective on NFP changed, or would you say not really?
I would say overall, not really. I would say in little ways, it can feel very unglamorous. Well, I think one thing, and Amy, I think I listened to your story and I think you said a similar thing that was funny, where I think when we were engaged, I was like, okay, so here's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna, pee on the stick or whatever, put in the monitor. And then again, for people that might not know, you get like a low reading, a high reading, or a peak reading, and then you also observe cervical mucus, and you can do basal body temperature if you want. But you don't need to. You solely pretty much rely on the monitor. So I'm going to do that. And then I'm going to tell you what the reading is. And then you're going to record it in the chart, right? So that like open communication, right? And so we did that for like a little bit, I think, just like for practice, but that's just like a lot. Life gets busy and you're just like, I haven't told you what my readings have been. I've just been putting it in the chart. And that's not, because Landon's not interested. He is interested. He's actually has always been very involved in it, which I'm grateful for. It's just, that's a lot. So I think that was one way that I was like, oh, it's going to be all, like every day we're going to talk about it. And that's what people say. It's like, oh, with NFP, it's so great because you have to talk about it all the time. And you do to an extent. But yeah, I mean, pretty much now it's like, I do the testing. I think one thing that might be a little less glamorous is it's like, low today, so if you're trying to avoid like, oh, we could have sex today, and then if it's a high day, you have to be like, oh, sorry, high day, no, if you want to have sex, no having sex tonight, whatever. And that can be, those conversations can be hard, as relatively newly married people. It's like, again, I got pregnant right away, so that changed some things, but postpartum or whatever, that can just feel like so vulnerable and just like, so much, it really opens up like, oh, one of the reasons, one of the, so I'm sorry, the word is slipping my mind, but sex is for, making babies, and it's for uniting each other as a couple. And I think that the communication of, low today, high today really keeps in mind, oh, this is for our fertility. And that can be like a hard truth to keep, reminding each other of, especially in a culture that is so like, oh, it's just, sex is just, to make you feel good, for fun, whenever you want. Right. So yeah, that's what I would say. Landon, I don't know if you have thoughts.
Yeah. So Landon, okay, so we're going to kind of circle back. Hopefully, Landon, I want to start at the beginning for you, and then we're going to meet up to where Izzy just left off, so we can kind of bring that together. I have a follow-up question for you. Yes. So, okay, Landon, so how about you? When did you kind of first learn about Catholic teaching and NFP, just general teaching on sexuality and marriage? And what was your initial response? Where were you at in your faith journey as well?
Yeah. So similar situation. I grew up Catholic, all that, but not in a kind of on fire household or environment. And I went to night school religion because I didn't go to a parochial school. I went to a private school that was not so. In order to get my sacraments, I had to go to this night school. And it was 8th grade, and I was already confirmed. And so it was actually the last class of school religion of like my life, which was like K through 8. And up to that point, I like could not tell you anything I had learned. And the teacher was like, "Do you guys want to go to confession up at the church, or do you want to watch this like video?" So obviously we're all like, put on the video. Like we're not going to confession. We're in 8th grade, so yeah, I have no idea where he got the tape from, but he puts it on, and it's a Jason Everett video, "Romance Without Regret," and yeah, he put it on. I mean, I was like sitting at my desk, and I was like laughing so hard. I was like, I was really enjoyed it, and I remember walking out of that classroom when the class was over, and being like, my life is different. Like I heard, because he was just talking about, I don't know if people have heard of Jason Everett, but he is he's known as a chastity speaker in Catholic circles. And so, but he also promotes the Catholic Church's teaching on marriage, on sexuality, on, he touches on, NFP, things like that, but he's really, this was particularly geared towards middle schoolers, high schoolers, who might be confused about, what sex is like at their age, and, why you should save it till marriage, why you should protect a woman, and protect her dignity, and why you should embrace the virtue of chastity. So I left that class, and I was like, okay, what he just said was like so true, so good, and so beautiful, that whatever the church teaches about anything else, like any other doctrine, any other dogma about the faith, about the moral life, like it must be true, because this was so good that if a church can get something this right, it must be right on everything else. So I was blown away, and I was like, all right, perfect. Like I know what to do. And I didn't do that for a while. So I went through high school, and it was promiscuous, and just just kind of swept away by my passions. But I always had this guiding light, because I knew what I wanted, because during that night in that class, I was just, my heart was just totally broken open to the beauty of the church's teaching on sex and marriage. So whenever I would veer off the path, and no matter how far it was, I was just always brought back to it. And then like when I went to college was when I like finally was like, all right, this is legit. I'm gonna try to practice this seriously. And so that was my experience. That was my first exposure to the church's teaching on marriage, sexuality. NFP, I honestly like the only thing I knew about NFP, like probably from like 0 to like 21, I only knew that like women get periods, and and I barely knew that. So, and then when I heard that, like, and I say this because I think a lot of men experience this, because unfortunately in the culture, like men are just told that, oh, just stay away from women when they're on their periods, and it's really sad, and like kind of, it's sad that we're told to like fear women's cycles, and so that was sort of like what I was brought up with, just like, by the culture. And then when I found out that like, okay, wait, they're infertile for a certain time, and like, like there's actually meaning in a cycle. I was like, that also blew my mind, because I was just like, that is wild, and like really, yeah, really just beautiful that women go through this experience, and that it's just built into a woman's body. And I was just also like, and then I was confused for like, okay, well, why would a woman want to suppress? Like, there were just so many things like hit me, like, then you get hit with like the the dangers of contraceptives, like the pill, and you're like, oh my gosh, like this. So it really just came on a wave, the NF, all the NFP stuff, and so, and then
in college, right?
In college, yeah. Yes. And then I just sort of, before Izzy and I got engaged, I just hit the books, try to learn as much as I could. And I've loved it ever since.
So when you were in college, Landon, and you kind of met God's grace again and really started to try to live out, that teaching of chastity in your state of life. Mm-hmm. And then you started to learn, and doing that, I think, you heard Jason Everett so articulately describe in such a beautiful and a disarming way what the church teaches, and it's so attractive. Mm-hmm. And then so you understand that, but I'm so curious if this is true. I don't want to put words into your mouth. I don't want to put thoughts into your head. So if you've never thought this, just say, no, Amy, that's very weird and out of left field. Mm-hmm. But in my experience teaching this information to college students, men and women, mm-hmm. I've shared this with Emily. We talked about on the podcast before too. There's something about men when you share the beauty of the female body and the rhythmic flow mm-hmm. of times of fertility and infertility. The male's call to chastity and to this radical self-control and this vocation to protect and guard this woman, it's like it suddenly makes sense. Like, oh, I see why. She's not like me. She's different. She doesn't have the same desire as me. Her very body doesn't act the same way as my body does. Mm-hmm. Like then my call makes sense because of her. And it brings this reality of our complementarity like mm-hmm. to the forefront. We actually see it in our bodies. I'm like getting chills right now, but I remember seeing young men almost have this like puff up in their chest, right? Emily, I've talked to you about that, where it's like, oh, like I want to be this man. It's like something they want to do, it's like, here's the challenge and I want to accept it. So anyway, I'm just curious if you learned about church's teaching, you felt like you were, really drawn to it. It was beautiful. You were learning more about it. You were trying to live it out in your life, but you didn't really understand the woman. And then mm-hmm. you learn about that through your study of NFP with Izzy by yourself. Did that all make more sense? And in a way, did it make living out chastity kind of quote unquote easier? And if not easier, at least like there was more of a mission sense.
Yes.
Does that make sense at all?
Yes. That's a very good point. Yeah, I'm very mission oriented. So, so yeah, when, I mean, I think when you're a man growing up, obviously, like you're told to be strong. You're told to be, the typical like suck it up, and you're supposed to be strong and brave. And it's hard to know what that is for, and or what the purpose of it is. And some people tell you that it's to attract women, and stuff like that. But then when you're like, well, if I'm married, who am I like? So, but the male strength is strength, in service of others. So your strength is only as good as it can be directed towards the service of another, and in marriage that's towards a woman, your wife. So yeah, when I found out about that and found out that it would be hard to live out this life, not only outside of marriage, but also like be chaste out, like single, and also be chaste married. Yeah, I was, I grew up, I love sports. I grew up liking sports, and, you watch these people like who are like playing a game, and then you like watch their workout videos or their training, and you're like, these people don't sleep. Like they are dedicating their lives to this, and like they are like really sacrificing a lot, and they got no days off. And so I'm like, why can't I do that in the spiritual life? Or why can't I do that like for my wife, my future wife? And yeah, so you're totally right when you say that it's there is sort of a puffing up, because I think men really want to hear like, what am I supposed to use my strength for? And like, I don't want to use it for just like lifting weights. I mean, that's cool, but like I don't want to just like there has to be more to that. And then when you say, well, the reason you're going to use it is to love this woman, and at first, their expectations might be a little like, oh my gosh, I thought like I could just use this woman for my desires. But then when they actually think about it, they're like, yeah, like that's pretty awesome. And I think I would do that. Lay down my life for my bride. And so, yeah, I think you're 100% right about that little anecdote of yours.
I'm crying. Yeah, I feel like I love these conversations because they remind me how much I love my husband too, and how I just would want this for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't mean that people that are trying this, like you guys, right? You're not perfect.
Mm-hmm.
But I have a good friend of mine, and she talks about how sometimes, the best that she can do is try to fall in the right direction. And I think that is just so beautiful, because I think just speaks to our humanity, right? It's like, Lord, I want this, like it's so beautiful. And I think just that strong desire, once I see the beauty, that I want that, and I fall in that direction, I have to imagine that brings some pleasure to the Lord, right? Like, oh, this week, me and my weakness, right? Striving for that beauty and that wholeness and that truth. So, okay. So that kind of brings us back to, I guess, where we are now. And so knowing, I think this connects us to where we left off with Izzy. So knowing that you guys both kind of came into marriage with this understanding, you were talking about it on the same page, and now you're practicing kind of in daily life. And to what you just said, Landon, which I think is so important and so different from our Protestant brothers and sisters, is that we approach sexuality from the viewpoint of chastity and not abstinence. I don't know if I shared this when I was giving my story. I don't remember what I shared in that, but I do want to share it now because I think it applies here. And it was with my friend, another Emily, actually, in Florida. And I had a little bit of a reversion back to the faith. I'm going to say this really quick because this episode's not about me, but I had this reversion back to the faith, and I was like all on board with, no sex before marriage. And I was going to these random abstinence Christian conferences. And my friend Emily was the nurse in the school that I taught at. And she came over to my house one day my apartment one day for dinner. And I was like coming off this weekend of going to this abstinence conference on these great speakers. And I kept saying abstinence, and I was like making dinner for us, and she would just very calmly, she's this little Filipino girl, and she was so calm and, well, blah, 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 chastity. And I was like, okay. And I didn't know why. It was really annoying because I was like, I'm saying abstinence. Why are you saying chastity? Anyway. And then I finally asked her about it because I was just irritated. I'm like, Emily, what are you saying? And we sat down on my couch, and she explained to me the difference between abstinence and chastity. And I was like, I thought I was on fire for abstinence, and I was totally on board of chastity. I was like, forget abstinence. Chastity is amazing. So I say that because chastity is a virtue we live out in every state of life. And so when we're single, there is more of a practice of abstinence, right? We're abstaining from sexual intercourse with other people. And then we're married. And as Catholics and we're married, we're still practicing chastity. So when we get married, we don't say, oh, great, well, we're married and God made sex for marriage. And so now we get to have sex whenever we want, however we want, and using birth control to have children whenever we want. And so I guess, how have you guys seen that play out in your own marriage, and to say like, oh, that's right, we're married now, we do get to engage in the marital act together because that's a renewal of our marriage vows. That's how we can bond as part of a sanctification process. And also we're practicing chastity, and there are also times for abstaining from sexual intercourse. So yeah, even though you guys went into marriage knowing that, I guess my question is like, have you guys found that to be a challenge? And you don't need to give us, intimate details, but, conversationally, just relationally, how is that working out?
Yeah, no, that's a great point. Abstinence versus chastity. Yeah. And I think that's a huge mental shift, right? To be like, oh, I'm married. I don't get to just stop praying for chastity, right? It's not like, oh, when you're dating and engaged, you're like, oh, Lord, please help me with my chastity. It's like, no, you still need to do that when you're married too. So yeah, so that's definitely a change. I think one of the more difficult things I think about the transition to marriage is that radical call to openness to life. We had a lot of discussions when we were engaged just about like, okay, like when, we're always open to life, but when are we going to, have a baby? That's a huge discussion. And I know, for me, I always wanted to be open to life, but that's huge, right? Becoming a mom, becoming parents. And there was a lot of fear, there were a lot of wounds, and, that's a whole nother podcast, right? But there was a lot of wounds just in my heart, about becoming a mom, soon, what would people think? What if I don't have this like super high powered career right out the gate? My little perfectionist heart, was like, oh goodness, am I worthy? If I'm quote unquote just a mom, and I think, that's part of chastity, right? Like the openness to life. When we get married, what are we using our sexuality for? And I think that conversation, obviously Lucy was not an accident. We were like going into marriage kind of full throttle, like, bring it on, Lord. If thy will be done, and if your will is for us to have a baby, we're all for that. But something that comes to mind is actually, Amy, something that you had told me when Landon and I were engaged and we went on a walk. It was like early in the morning and it was lovely. You'd take me on these walks sometimes, and I really appreciated your wisdom. But you had told me, I don't even know if you remember this, but it's stuck in my mind, and I've told multiple women about this. You had told me, how beautiful, but what a responsibility your sexuality and marriage is, and the call to be open to life and to have children. And it's not always about having more children. You always need to be open to having another child, right? Like I'm 6 months postpartum, right? There's a lot of reasons why, couples, good reasons, grave reasons why they avoid having children. So, I'm not talking about every single context, right? But, one day I am going to die and stand in front of God and, need to, in some ways have a conversation with him about how I used our marriage, and the gift of my body and the gift of my femininity and ability to have children, and was I selfish? Was I like, no, I'm not gonna, we're not gonna be open to having a child right now, or we're gonna avoid for a few years just because I'm afraid of how hard it's going to be, or I'm afraid of what people are going to think. Or I would rather, again, be making a lot of money in some career, just, whatever. So, yeah, I think that was one of like the hardest things for me to just go through, like mentally, emotionally, spiritually, is just that like radical openness to life. And I'm so glad that, we ended up where we were, of like, yes, we're going for it right away, because that's been such a blessing. And I love Lucy more than I ever thought I possibly could love one of my children, yeah, so that's been great. But yeah, my pregnancy was hard. It was a hard one. Postpartum, a lot easier than how my pregnancy was, I think. So yeah, I think that, sorry, that was kind of long, but that was, I think just, yeah, what has been kind of like the hardest thing going into marriage is the hardest and most beautiful is embracing that call to openness openness to life, and, how that looks in all of its difficulty and beauty.
You, Landon, anything you wanted to add?
Yeah. I mean, it's coming from a guy's perspective. I think, I've heard too many men, including myself, say things like, yeah, once you're married, it's just free range, open seasons. You can get out all your passions and your, those things that you've been holding on to. And like, growing up in an over hypersexualized culture, you're lucky if you come out clean before you're married, having just different wounds in your heart about what sex will be like and your expectations for it. So yeah, I mean, I think if there's anyone out there who's like, yeah, I mean, I just really got to white knuckle this until I'm married, it's probably going to get harder once you're married. So yeah, I just, I think chastity is extremely important, and it's something to continue to pray for, and to yeah, I mean, I would just say if you have like sort of unresolved wounds, broken expectations from previous relationships, or even family of origin, and you come into marriage and those are unidentified, festering, and you bring that into the marriage bed, I would just say, get ready. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's and so I mean, chastity is one of your tools, one of the tools that the Lord's used to break open your heart, and there's many others, but yeah, I would just say for people who aren't married and are trying to live out chastity, just like ask the Holy Spirit to really do an inventory on your heart and where you're at when it comes to yeah, if you're single and you're trying to live out chastity, and but you expect it to your problems to be solved in marriage. I mean, all your problems, but especially your sexual identity. Then I would just invite the Holy Spirit into your heart to do a serious inventory of the wounds that you're carrying, from just any experience that you've had. And it doesn't need to be necessarily anything over the top, but even just, watching sleazy TV shows that can have a damage on you. So yeah, I would just say it. I mean, sex is the path to holiness for married couples, and so because this is the path to holiness, it is the cross of marriage. So you need to be ready to embrace your cross, and anyone who says differently, you can tell them they're wrong.
Yeah, it's true.
You are lying. Yeah, I think that's all such good points, Landon. And yeah, I think just that encouraging reminder to people who are discerning marriage is to remember that marriage is the starting line, not the finish line.
Yeah, totally.
The finish line is heaven. The starting line is your wedding day.
Mm-hmm.
So you can prepare for the race during your single years, and by cultivating virtue and practicing chastity, and cultivating friendships that also help you through that process. Because yeah, the culture is definitely stacked against us in a lot of ways when it comes to human sexuality. So, and the formation of our understanding of the meaning of sex and marriage. Okay, guys, thank you so much for your time. I know we're about an hour here. So before we leave the conversation, maybe you guys can just share, each of you, I guess any like last minute or final thoughts you have on NFP, on sexuality, on dating, on marriage. You guys dated. I know because I know you guys, that you dated within the context of like a really solid Catholic young adult community at your campus, which I know not a lot of people are blessed to have. But you were still at a secular school. So it's not like you were immersed in like a completely, chaste faith-based community.
Right.
So talking to, people that were in, your similar situation, tips, words of wisdom, or great resources like, other podcasts or books or anything like that. So whatever you'd like to leave the audience with, I'll just let you both share.
Yeah. I think just like one or two quick things. One, I think if, someone's listening to this and they're like, yeah, I'm not sure, I can do it. I don't know that I can live out the church's teaching on chastity, on sex, on marriage. Or, they have this like, it seems wrong to me. I would just invite them to really ask themselves why, like why is it, just because you think it's going to be too hard, is it because you think, this was a thought I had, like, would a guy ever love me that much to actually wait to have sex with me, until I'm married? How am I ever going to find a guy who's cute and athletic and all the things that I like, right? All the things that I want in a man, and he doesn't just want to have sex with me, or, does, but doesn't, waits until we're married and respects me. I think, yeah, so just inviting, the listeners, if you're struggling with that, to just, just explore a little deeper why. And then also, if someone's like, oh, because I know I was there, like, I'm never going to find a man, right? I'm never going to, find a man that would do this. Or I think God, created God created you with your desires and with all your wonderfulness and your personality. He also created a spouse for you if you're called to marriage. And you have to just keep on going forward. So I'm saying that just because that's something that I needed to hear at that time, when I was, pre-Landon ages. I think resource. I mean, we listen to a lot of the same stuff, so I'll just say like one or two things, and Landon can take the others. But one podcast I really like is the Restore the Glory podcast with Dr. Bob Schutz and Dr. Jake Kim. They're Catholic therapists, and they are great. They interview people, but they just really, dive into, and even if you're not Catholic, it's a great thing to listen to. But it is faith-based counseling, but it's also just human formation. And I think just talking about marriage like Landon was, I think counseling is one of the greatest tools that you can, bring into your marriage, or a way to prepare for marriage, just because it's the path to holiness. So when you're married, everything's got to kind of come out. So I think it's just, that's a great resource that I love. They have a lot of great podcasts on sexuality, healing sexual wounds and things like that. So that's what I would say.
Yeah, I think my two would, and it would be in this order. The first one would be to just listen to Jason Everett, listen to Christopher West. I mean, like, when I listen to Christopher West talk about the church's teaching on sex and theology of the body, like, I want to run through a brick wall when I'm done because I am so fired up and so renewed. And yeah, if you've never heard it before, it might sound a little weird, but these men, and Kristalina Everett, Jason's wife, also speaks to this, so she's big time. But these two particular men speak about the, and it is the church's teaching, but it's also just like, even if the church didn't teach it, it's just true.
Just makes sense.
It just makes sense. You can discover these things without, quote unquote, the church. And so this stuff is just true. It's good and it's beautiful. So, yeah, if you're Buddhist, you should still do this stuff.
Yes.
So these men talk about the beauty of our sexual identity, and they speak with so much passion and conviction that you can't walk away and be like, yeah, they're crazy, because. And they'll obviously they'll talk about their own personal experience, but they've got data, they've got research. I mean, it's not like they're just sort of speaking about this ethereal thing. I mean, one of the beautiful things about this teaching is like it's true, yeah, capital T, but it's also true like empirically. Another good resource is like the Institute of Family Studies that does a lot of research about just cohabitating couples and divorce rates, or couples who use contraceptives, just stuff like that. It's like, okay, if you were to pick an objectively divorce proof path for marriage, it would be what the church teaches, and that's just sort of like empirically. So that would be the first thing. The second thing is something that we're kind of talking about earlier is, if you're, and Izzy brought this up, if you're someone who is has a resistance to this, or isn't quite sure, I would just do a serious inventory and think about why. And this might be the first time that you thought about the thing, because honestly, when we were speaking earlier about that time where I was thinking about whether I want to date Izzy or not, that was like some of the first times I thought about, like, wait, like, would me becoming a priest just be running away from my sexual wounds? And I was like, yeah, it totally would be. And so I think just really, just taking a deep look and thinking about just ways that you've been hurt, and being honest, and, seek forgiveness, try to love others as best you can, and you'll be there in no time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you guys. Thank you so much, Izzy and Landon, for taking time as new parents, staying up to be with us. We really appreciate it. Thanks everybody for tuning in. And I will link to those resources that Izzy and Landon listed. So check the show notes for those. And we will see you guys in the next episode. Bye, guys.
Bye. Thanks,
Bye.
Amy.
That wraps up another episode of the NFP Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us today. We hope you found our discussion enlightening and empowering. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. We'd love to hear from you. Please connect with us by sending us an email with your questions and stories to thenfpshow@gmail.com. We'll be back next week with more insights, tips, and heartfelt conversations about natural family planning. Until then, love responsibly.